Mike, appreciate you making some time for us this morning. Arkansas at one point looked like it was going to have the best wide receiver duo in the SEC. I think the debate was, did they have the best wide receiver core? I don't know if that's necessarily the case now. From your perspective, from an SEC outside of Arkansas perspective, how big of a loss is Mike Woods to the transfer portal?
Oh, man, it's a big one, no doubt. Mike Woods, he had developed into an elite deep threat, returned more yards per catch than anybody in the SEC. So, that gives you an indication of what Arkansas is losing. But it's certainly a blow. But at the same time, man, I've got so much faith in Kendal Briles and his system. I think he got more out of Mike Woods than anybody ever had. So I've got confidence in them to find someone else to step up. I think it'll be someone like Davion Warren. I think he's going to have to be that deep threat for Arkansas. And it's certainly a blow, but it's not doom and gloom or anything, I don't think.
You think about his next destination, Mike, and I wonder if there's an opportunity. I know people have speculated Oklahoma, somewhere in Texas, A&M, Georgia. I'm just tossing a few out, South Carolina. Any idea from your sources that where he could end up, and what are the odds that you think he could be playing Arkansas this fall?
Yeah, I initially thought South Carolina for sure to reunite with Justin Stepp, but that was just my speculation. What I'm hearing is, he's in constant contact with Oklahoma, so I think he's going to join the Sooners, get closer to home, and I guess the allure of trying to win a national championship is maybe winning out here, but just a strange decision at a strange time, and I wonder if Arkansas at all considers filing some kind of complaint for tampering, because I don't understand how this all came about, but it's baffling, basically. I don't have the words to describe it.
It's a head scratcher to see him go through the spring game and then, hours later, enter the portal and essentially be gone. So he's out via portal. Would there be another player that you think would be a fit, someone that might be coming into the portal? That's how it's done these days. Is there someone maybe you go look at, if you're Sam Pittman and Kendal Briles, you want to add to the roster?
Yeah, at this point, there's not a ton of receivers that I see in the portal, but Mississippi State just had a guy, Javonte Payton. He's a pretty good receiver. He only had 19 catches last season, maybe just not a fit for that Mike Leach offense, but I know Tennessee was after him. I know Ole Miss was after him. So if you're looking for someone with some SEC experience, might as well hurt your rival and upgrade your program a little bit. I'd look at Javonte Payton if I'm Arkansas.
So who does this move put more pressure on, Kendal Briles, KJ Jefferson, or Treylon Burks?
Probably Burks, just because, he's already was going to be looking at double teams next season. But like I said, I think KJ Jefferson, I've been saying it for basically the entire offseason, but I think he's going to be the breakout quarterback in the SEC. It does hurt that Mike Woods no longer going to be a factor, but, just based on what I'm hearing and what I saw in the spring game, I think Arkansas has got not only the receivers, which I thought was going to be key, but it looks like they're much deeper at running back than I thought, and we all know what they're returning on the offensive line. I think Arkansas's offense is going to be outstanding next season, led by KJ Jefferson. I think he may end up being the top 2 or 3 SEC quarterback next season, and that's a lot of confidence in Kendal Briles to get him there.
We're talking with SEC Mike, Saturday Down South, here on the Morning Rush, also a host of that SEC podcast. Mike, I have noticed that you've taken a liking to KJ Jefferson. You think about his ability to run. He's got a good deep ball. We saw that against Missouri last year. What other intangibles do you like about KJ Jefferson that leads you to believe he could potentially be a top 3 quarterback in the Southeastern Conference this year?
Well, I just know people that have been following him since his days in Mississippi high school, and they've been raving about this guy. And, I know this, no fans want to talk about the Chad Morris era, but I look at a quarterback, a young quarterback especially, when they get into the game, is the game too big for him? And I know KJ Jefferson didn't get a lot of action his freshman season, but I believe it was the Western Kentucky game. He came in, and he just looked the part. And now we see it last season on the road at Missouri. Felipe Franks couldn't play, and Arkansas should have won that game if not for the defense collapsing down the stretch. So everything I've seen from KJ Jefferson, it's not going to be too big for him. And I just think that with Kendal Briles, just look at his history of developing quarterbacks. He rarely gets a guy to stay in his system for 2 years because he's jumping around to other jobs so much. I just think all the pieces are in place, the talent around them. KJ Jefferson is going to have a huge, huge season, and I don't think enough people outside of Arkansas are talking about the potential he has in this offense.
Mike, I know you pay a little more attention to the East than the West because that's where Tennessee is, and I know your connection's there. And Josh Heupel coming in his first season, I know that the quarterback room got a little more crowded. What is the East looking like? I know JT Daniels looked pretty good for Georgia in their spring game. Is it pretty much looks like Georgia's the heavy favorite with Trask exiting Florida this past year?
Yeah, I'd be stunned if anybody wins the East outside of Georgia. I mean, it's basically a wide gap, and I can't even figure out who's going to be number 2. I mean, you could possibly Kentucky. That should tell you how the East is stacking up this season as opposed to the West, where I think basically 3 through 7 is up for grabs, and I don't think there's much of a gap between 3 and 1 and 2 this year in the West. So the East is just going to be Georgia all day. Whereas the West I've got as a complete toss-up, basically.
So I'm assuming you have Alabama at 1. I'd be interested to know who you have at 2 and 3. I'm assuming LSU and A&M are going to be somewhere in that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm not even sold on Alabama being number 1, to be honest with you. The more I hear out of Tuscaloosa, they're hyping up this defense and all that, and we're going back to the Nick Saban dominant defense days. Well, college football's changed. You can't win the SEC. You can't win a college football playoff with just defense. So that tells me that the offense down there is really struggling with a new quarterback, new offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator, lost some good receivers, lost basically everybody on the offensive side of the ball. So I think LSU right now is the team to beat potentially in the West. I'll put LSU number 2 for now, but neck and neck with Alabama. And then, like I said, basically beyond that, up for grabs. Texas A&M makes a lot of sense. I think the one team that could really struggle is Auburn. I've currently got them number 7 in the West, and I mean they've got more talent than just about anybody in the East. So that should give you an indication of just how tough the West is right now.
You mentioned LSU being one of those teams you got pegged in at the top. What happens if it doesn't go that way this year and Ed Orgeron's club falls at 7 wins or maybe 8 and doesn't look impressive? Will that be the end of the line for Ed in Baton Rouge?
Man, it'll be like Gene Chizik down there, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
2 years removed from a national championship, but
then change the whole staff for this year, and then it seems like his back's to the wall.
I know it. So that's the beauty of the SEC. 1 minute you're on top of the mountain, the next they're kicking you to the curb. Just signed a huge extension, but yeah, maybe if they struggle just on the field, I would say no. But as we all know, LSU is going through all types of stuff behind the scenes, and with the Darius Geis allegations, and obviously Les Miles lost his job at Kansas, and what's going on at LSU. So if Ed Orgeron, if they can prove, is connected to that at all, I'm sure, just like Tennessee did with Jeremy Pruitt in the recruiting allegations, I think they'll tie Coach O to it if they struggle on the field. They'll probably use that as an excuse not to pay him his buyout. So, yeah, I don't think it's far-fetched at all to say Coach O's on the hot seat, but I also think just with all the talent he's got to work with this season, I think LSU is going to be right back where they were. Maybe not on that 2019 level. That may be one of the best teams of all time, but clearly a contender to win the SEC in my eyes.
Mike, before we let you go, we do a segment every single Wednesday, What's Your Beef Wednesday, something that's been ticking us off either this week, this weekend. Is there something that's been really irritating you to this point in the last week or month or so that you'd like to share with us and our listeners this morning?
Yeah, I get tired of these people saying these spring games don't matter and you can learn nothing from them, and why are we spieling on about them? Because, hey, last time I checked, we're about 6 months away from the season, and I devour every tidbit I can find out of these camps, and I've watched each SEC spring game that's aired twice already, And, hey, if it's not for you, that's cool, but it is for me, so I don't want to hear about how they're not important. That's basically all I've got this weekend to look forward to is a couple more spring games.
Yeah. It's time for true spring games, though, Mike. We need regional matchups with two teams battling, not this inter-squad stuff anymore.
Oh, I hear you. And when Mike Gundy suggested that a couple weeks ago, man, I ate that up, and I previewed matchups for all the SEC teams who I'd like to see. And how about this? I picked for Arkansas. I'd love to see Arkansas and Arkansas State go at it every spring. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they're set to play in 2025. That would be something that I think that some fans would be for, some fans would be against, but it's definitely an intriguing idea. Yeah. There's no question about it.
Let me give you one other this short term. Arkansas and Missouri State with Bobby Petrino bringing a team in here.
Would he ride in on a motorcycle? That's my next question. But
right through the South Gate.
I'd be fully on board for that one.
That'd be intriguing. I don't know if it'd be a good game, but it'd be intriguing.
Golly, yeah. Mike, appreciate your time, buddy. It's good to catch up, and we'll talk again as we get closer to football, okay, man?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Good stuff from SEC Mike. That SEC podcast does a great job with that. Also, you can follow him on Twitter at Michael W. Bratton.